first. Then take care of the child next to you. Because if you can't breathe, you are of no help to anyone else. Translation, if your family is hurting and has trouble paying the rent and has trouble buying food and has trouble getting by, many, dare I say, most people are not going to be tolerant of people trying to encroach on what they believe they should have. Translation, they're not going to be kind to refugees. So I found that story interesting, if not disturbing. Look for that to continue to expand as long as we have this pandemic going on like it is now. My opinion, but again, my opinion based in fact. Okay, the essay today, all men are not created equal. Just ask the COVID-19. I read an article by one of my favorite authors. This was an article, again, in the Wall Street Journal. And one of my favorite authors of all times, his name is Jared Diamond. He's a smart guy. And he's not a doctor, but he's a journalist, but he takes a lot of information, compiles it, and then comes up with very interesting theories. And this book that he wrote years ago called Guns, Germs, and Steel, it has to do it talks about why the Eurasian world has dominated. Eurasians have just dominated the whole world, starting in Central Asia, moving into Europe years ago, some 10,000 years ago. And basically, every civilization in the world has been dominated by and influenced by European or Central Asian peoples. Everyone. West Africans kind of are in there too. But 90% of the world has been influenced by Europeans and Central Asians. And it has to do with, okay, what makes these people unique from any other people? And the bottom line is they domesticated livestock. Okay? They domesticated livestock. They ate the meat. They drank the milk. They used the fur to wear on their bodies in the form of wool, for example. Okay? Not just skins. But pandemics and plagues have always decimated economies. So what the COVID-19 disease is doing to our world economy is nothing new. This has always happened, okay? But COVID-19 is truly unique because this has never happened before except for the Spanish flu. I'm going to repeat that. This has never happened before except with the Spanish flu. Now, you may say, okay, Strong, that's not true. We've had pandemics and diseases forever in the world. But here's why this is unique, and it has never been duplicated except for the Spanish flu, okay? Because in the Spanish flu, soldiers from Europe got onto steamships, and in a matter of weeks were able to arrive on the North American shores and spread that pandemic. Today, we get on airplanes, which are even faster than steamships, and that's how the pandemic was spread. Before, you never had that, okay? Because mountain ranges, seas, and oceans separated people. And while they eventually got from part A to part B, point A to point B, it took a long, long time for that to happen. Not so much anymore, okay? Now, other pandemics have just destroyed and decimated societies, and the biggest one was the Black Death, okay? Now, the Black Death, it totally decimated Europe and Central Asia, to that matter. Now, the question has been brought up: are we now entering an age of pandemics? And the answer is maybe. Now, before you think I'm going all God is dead and the war's begun on you, please hear me out. This essay is going to take a while to build, so please be patient with me, okay? I think you'll find it interesting. In fact, I think you'll find it worthwhile, and I don't believe you've heard this spin or opinion on the pandemic ever before. So if you could, please be patient. That's my opinion, that we may well be entering the age of pandemics. Okay, this may be nothing new. This may be the new normal. Okay, and the reason I say that is because almost always throughout history, pandemics are spread from animal to human. Now, not the common cold, but everybody gets the common cold. The common cold is actually not a whole lot different from this coronavirus or the Spanish flu. The difference is the cold is a virus that mutated, okay? That's why we catch it. And quite often, we've caught it because it's a mutation that we don't have immunities or antibodies to, but we kind of do, okay? We have antibodies that have controlled something close to this. So we get a sniffly nose, we get a itchy eyes, we cough a little bit. Most of us continue to go to work. It's a hassle, okay? You got to blow your nose and feel kind of icky for a day or two, but it's no big deal because we have antibodies, okay? This maybe isn't the case. These new pandemics, because a pandemic that decimates people are almost always an animal to human type of pathogen. The Black Plague was that way, okay, back in the 1300s. That went from rat to flea to man, okay? And it killed almost 1/3 of Europe, killed them between 1347 and 1351. Think about that. Almost 1/3 of the civilized world's population was killed, okay? Now, not only that was the main portion of it was between 1347 and 1351. Now, it reoccurred with lower death tolls for many, many decades after that. It continued to decimate Europe and the economy of Europe. In fact, it decimated the economy of Europe so much that the big landowners, they had no workers to tend the land. Think about it. You're a landowner with more money than God, and you rule the roost over people. You have serfs that you say, look, okay, I'm going to let you live on my land and keep some of what you farm so that you can not starve to death. All the rest you give to me. And when the invaders come, you can get into my walled city and I'll protect you. So basically, you had two choices. You're a serf and you live for the landowner, or you starve to death, okay? Most chose to live for the landowner. However, because so many people died, there were no workers to tend the land of the landowner. So if you don't have anybody to plant your crops or harvest the crops or mill the grain or, it doesn't matter. You're not going to have anything, and you too are going to starve to death. So the silver lining to the dark cloud of the Black Death is the landowners thought, well, you know what? How do I get more people? There just aren't many people to choose from anymore. They're all dead. I know. I'll start paying these people, and I'll give them rights, and I'll start treating them better, and I will lure them onto my land with better benefits, more freedom, more money, and a better lifestyle for them and their families. And it worked. The benevolent landowners got people. The not-so-benevolent landowners starved to death until they got the picture that, okay, I got to pay these people and treat them right. That was the silver lining to the Black Plague, okay? Now, this pandemic is the same. We're not sure what, but this pandemic changed things. The Black Plague turned lifestyles on a dime. They caused things to change. They caused the people in charge to treat the people who were not in charge differently. It changed the whole game. Now, this is the same thing. Things are going to change forever because of this coronavirus. Nobody knows how. Nobody knows why. Nobody knows, or we know why, but we don't know for how long. We don't know what, but we're going to find out, okay? Now, here's the thing. The Black Plague, everybody reads about how it affected Europe. Now, it affected Central Asia as well, but that's not quite as publicized, okay? Because during that time, the 1300s, okay, who ruled the roost in Central Asia? Genghis Khan's Mongols, okay? The Mongolian Empire reached throughout China, throughout Persia, and well into Russia, okay? And they were kings of the castle because they ruled with iron fists. They controlled the land. They controlled the people. But this disease also decimated the Mongols. So basically, they had a handful of people ruling a big hunk of the world. They had to take care of the matters at home in Mongolia, so they kind of let the Chinese and the Persians and the Russians kind of left them alone for a while. They took back over, and that's how the Black Plague decimated the Mongolian Empire, basically shrunk it because they didn't have the people to manage it anymore, okay? And throughout history, tropical diseases have done the same thing. For example, Europeans never really colonized Africa or the East Indies, New Guinea, etc., until they came up with quinine. Because basically the Europeans would go to Africa, they go to New Guinea, they go to Indonesia, and they'd get malaria, and it would just, they couldn't operate. It would kill them, okay? Now, malaria was something that affected peoples of that region as well, but they'd been around it for a long time, and it didn't affect as many of them, and it didn't affect them like the Europeans. Along came quinine. Okay, now you get malaria, but the quinine, it doesn't cure you, but it lets you live with the disease. We'll just say that, okay? So quinine came about. Now the Europeans weren't affected by malaria like they used to be, and they colonized Africa, and they colonized the East Indies. By the way, if you've ever tasted quinine, it's very bitter. It's horrible to drink. The aftermath of quinine. I mean, how do you get somebody to drink quinine, especially a Brit? Well, you mix it with gin. Okay, the sailors got a gin ration. And that's how you take your quinine and your limes, for instance, too, by mixing it with gin. And that's how they came up with the gin and tonic drink. They drank the gin and quinine so much that they acquired a taste. And to this day, tonic water it's just that. It's a tonic. It's a medicine. It's a it's a controlled medicine that in larger doses is necessary for controlling malaria. But to this day, we still drink gin and tonic, okay? But I digress. Malaria did decimate the Europeans, but not so much after they got the quinine cure, or at least the medicine that let them operate. But the Africans and the Pacific Islanders, they had a resistance because they had been around these mosquitoes for generations. Now, let's fast forward to the New World. The Europeans went into the New World, and basically the reason the Europeans were able to conquer North America and South America is because of smallpox. And smallpox is a disease that is obtained through animals, not unlike the COVID-19, okay? A disease that's acquired by man through animals, okay? And smallpox was always a problem, even in Europe, okay? But the thing is the people, basically everybody was exposed to smallpox at one time or another, and they had antibodies. They were partially immune. And some did die, but because they had the immunities, because they had the antibodies, it basically made them sick, and then they were immune, and they never got sick again, okay? They were all exposed. Some died, but most survived, and now they were immune to smallpox. Not so for the New World people. They had no antibodies. They had no immunities. So they were decimated by smallpox. In fact, there's a case in Missouri. In 1837, there was a steamship that was going up the Missouri River, not too terribly far from St. Louis. And they encountered a group of Mandan Indians. These Mandan Indians had never been exposed to the smallpox disease before. There was a village of 2,000 of these Mandan Indians. Within a matter of weeks, all but 40 died of smallpox. Again, because they had absolutely no antibodies to the disease. Now, how did the Spanish defeat the Incas and the Aztecs? We all read about Pizarro. We all read about Cortez and how he conquered the Incas, how he